Here.
Mr. O'Day?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan? Here. Mr. Mayor?
Here.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News, Courier News, the Star Ledger, filed with the municipal clerk and posted on the municipal bulletin board on December 12, 2017. Let's all rise to pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no presentation, so we'll move on to approval of minutes. October 22nd, 2018 minutes. We will all be voting on that. November 13, 2018. Myself, Mr. O'Day, Mr. Schmidt were absent, so we won't be voting on those minutes. So I'd like to, somebody want to move the minutes?
I'll move.
Separate. Do we need separate votes, Jack?
We can do them together and just abstain on the November 13th.
Okay. So you're going to move?
Actually, legally, you can't vote, but I know most people.
Okay, so why don't we move first, October 27, 2018?
I'll move.
Somebody second. Anthony?
We can do a voice vote, I believe, for this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aye?
Just aye.
All in favor?
Okay. November 13, 2018.
I'll move that.
Voice?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, let's move on to open session. At this point in the meeting, the mayor and council welcome comments from any members of the public to help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit the opportunity for everyone who wishes to be heard. Speakers shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. If reading from a prepared statement, please provide a copy or an email copy to the clerk's office after making your comments, or it may so can it properly reflect in the minutes. Do I hear anybody from the public want to come forward and just say your name and your address?
Jeff, before we do that,
Yep.
I think the Open Space Committee has an update for some clarification that came out of the last meeting, the November 13th meeting. So could we have the Open
sure.
Space Committee just
Could you just
provide their
hold on 1 second and
clarification,
let the open
their
space?
clarifying comments?
Who's representing the open space?
I am, but I
Okay.
thought we were going to do that for the public hearing on open, or the ordinance, or does it matter?
Well, we could either wait before the ordinance. I think it might be helpful because it answers some of the questions that were raised prior to during the course of the last meeting. And so since we can answer some of those questions up front, it might help from having people bring up the same issues that, we can answer for them right now.
Oh,
If that's right with you.
Whichever. Mary Jane Canos, Autumn Hill Drive. This would be my last official act as a member of the Open Space Committee, but I think when we had a meeting this past week, we noticed some of the comments from the audience that we wanted to clarify, how open space money came to be and how it's used. So it was November of 1998. There was a referendum that the Bernardsville residents approved that established the municipal open space, recreation, and farmland and historic trust fund to be used exclusively for the purpose of, and this is a quote, acquiring lands for recreation and conservation purposes, acquiring farmland for farmland preservation purposes, and the acquisition of properties for historic preservation purposes. This trust fund is funded through an amount not to exceed 2 cents per $100 of assessed valuation of the annual tax levy. 10 years after that, in 2008, there was a second public question that was approved that expanded the use of the trust fund for the development of lands that are included in the borough's recreation and open space inventory. And that includes construction, renovation, and repair.
And it's 20%.
It's a maximum of 20% of any cost connected to such development may be obtained from the trust fund revenues that were collected after that date in 2008. So we have used that money in the past for Claremont Field repairs. There was drainage there, the Claremont Steps, Kiwanis Field, the new basketball courts and repairs at over by the pool.
Some
There's
playgrounds.
new playground equipment at Kiwanis Field. So, and we also use it when we do surveys and appraisals. It comes out of that 20%. So, and if you want to know anything about the Open Space Trust Fund, it is posted, our recently updated Open Space and Recreation Plan is on the borough website. It's very thorough. It shows you everything that's in our inventory, what properties we have on our wish list, where all the different properties are, and what they could be used for. So that was just, because I know some people didn't really understand, because it was a long time ago that we put that in place. As for the property at 251, the Open Space Committee did recommend the purchase of that, mainly because it preserves open space, and it also provides access to Peters Track. However, we do want to specify that if the property is purchased, that we want borough residents to be included in any discussions as to how that property is going to be used and how Peters Track will be used. We also recommend that the council wait until the appraisals have been received and reviewed before taking any action on this ordinance. And we also recommend that the council simultaneously conduct a more in-depth study and comparison of the adjacent property at 261 as a possible alternative or an addition, but that we keep that in the inventory for consideration. Questions? Anything? We good?
Are you suggesting to buy 251 and 261?
We could. I mean, 261 is in our inventory. 251 is not. So
What do you
that's
mean, your inventory?
that in our open space and recreation plan, we have an inventory of properties that we feel are possible purchases. So we kind of designate areas. But it's worth, if anybody wants to read it, or if you have questions or want to talk about that or myself, it's a pretty thorough report, so thank you.
I'd just like to clarify one point, because you used the word maintenance, and a maintenance portion, which was approved for monies that were
20%.
or gathered since 2009. That was the first year that 20% was set aside into this maintenance fund. It's not for general maintenance of the town or roads or paving.
No.
It's for maintenance of open space, existing open space, or any new open space which we might buy that would need to be maintained. That's what that maintenance portion would be for.
Right. Yeah, it has to be for recreation purposes and,
Right.
and or on open space that we've already purchased.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor, one other question. Do you, any plans, theoretically, you know, if the ordinance passes, any plans for what the use would be?
Of Peters Tract,
251, 261, and Peters Track?
the only thing we have ever talked about is passive recreation, is trails. I think there's already some existing trails that people that live nearby use. We'd like other people in the community to be able to use it. We just opened up the Old Army Trail, and I think people have really enjoyed that. It hasn't added to the traffic or anything in that area. And the Laurelwood Trail is also open. So our goal is to have a trail system that connects all different areas of the town, brings people downtown, people can, you know, spend an afternoon walking through the trails and have lunch downtown and that kind of thing. And on another note, my property abuts Peters Track in the back, and you know, for me as a living there, I don't find it a problem for that to be, if it's passive. I think as someone who lives there, I would be fine if there's trails, as long as there's a proper buffer, and I think a lot of that is in the planning, and that's why we recommend that residents be involved in that planning. And, you know, no decisions are made as to how the property is used without input from the people who live in the area, as well as the community at large.
There's plenty of seats up front, folks, if you want to sit up here. There's plenty of open spots.
May I make one clarification? The money can be used for development, but not maintenance per se. It can't be used for like mowing the grass.
No, right, it's like a capital type
Exactly.
purchase, yes.
Exactly.
Not regular maintenance, but a capital improvement.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Agricultural development.
Yeah.
Thanks for that
State
clarification.
statute allows maintenance as well, but the council that time specifically did not include maintenance as
Right.
permitted use.
Thank you.
Also, too, let me add, we've been looking at this one property, 261, since I've been on council, and we've gone nowhere with it. And if you look at the surrounding properties for Peter Track, 251 and 261 really are the only opportunities for the borough to get access to Peters Track. The other properties are much larger, and they'll be much more expensive.
I'm sorry, are we now having the open session
Yes.
for the ordinance?
Hold on one second. Are you done? Any more questions? We will.
The reason I think
I'm
it's,
just confused. This was the open session just for general comment about an item that's not specifically on the agenda.
Yes, it's coming.
Okay, so we're now having open public comment on the ordinance.
Yes, you step up to the microphone when she's done.
Awesome, thank you.
But there's somebody before you. I don't know where she went.
You know, Jeff, if you're going to do that, open the public hearing on the ordinance, why don't we introduce it and open it?
Okay.
Just move it up.
Okay.
Yeah, just move it up in the agenda.
All right, let's do that then. Let me move the ordinance up. I said it's the third one in our list of ordinance. So the mayor to continue the public hearing on November 13th. Ordinance 181760. 86, appropriating $950,000 from the Borough Open Space Trust Fund for the purchase of 251 Claremont Road. Anybody from the public who would like to discuss this? Ma'am, you step forward, just say your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Paula Stewart, 76 Mount Harmony Road, and I'm the chairman of the Environmental Commission. We submitted the following memo to the council members, which I'd like to read for the record on this proposed ordinance. The Environmental Commission supports the acquisition of open space and the prospect of improved access to an existing property dedicated to open space, Peters Tract. However, the Environmental Commission respectfully requests that the council not continue with this resolution without the following. Number one, obtaining the certified value, and we have listed the DEP guidelines in our memorandum. We want to ensure that the maximum reimbursement from Green Acres funding is required. And by that requirement, part of that is obtaining two appraisals and submitting them, appraisers that are on the Green Acres list, and that they are certified by Green Acres. If you pay more than what the property is assessed for, you won't get the full reimbursement of the 50% of whatever their certified value is. Two, determine by preliminary assessment what the cost of demolition and other infrastructure removal costs would be in order to qualify for reimbursement from Green Acres funding. And again, those requirements are listed. Three, ask the Open Space Committee to present a plan for the use of the property, including what would be required to access Peters Tract. For example, tree removal, trail creation, public safety. In addition, the plan should include how much parking. We would recommend a limited amount, and the parking should be a pervious, not impervious surface, as used by New Jersey Audubon, Rare Headwaters, and Great Swamp Watershed, among many others in the area. There should also be a timeline for the development and the use of the property. Green Acres allows, which you may or may not be aware of, 2 years. There's a contract that carries a term of 2 years, by which time you need to have a completed project. Buying land, and I'm quoting from the Green Acres website, buying land for constructing the park can be a very complicated process. However, whether or not you use Green Acres money, we will be working closely with you as you proceed. So as long as you know you're following our procedures and making significant progress during each step of the process, we will consider granting an extension. Number 4, make a comparison for cost and access from this property, 251 to 261 Claremont Road. For example, a letter of interpretation for the wetlands that exist on 251 should be required. 5, determine whether the property owner has been advised of the potential tax advantages of a bargain sale. And we've also provided those guidelines. If you're not familiar with that concept, the example given on their website is that if the certified market value of a property is $100,000 and the property owner is willing to sell it to you for $50,000, the difference becomes a donation of $50,000 of land value can serve as your match. That donation/match option applies to both local government and nonprofit projects. And that's what our comments are. And I also have a copy of the property that shows some of the wetlands. This was, that part was not emailed, but the rest of it was given to me. Thank you.
Hey, Jack, when are we supposed to get those appraisals returned?
We received one.
Yeah, right, well, both of
We'll
them.
get the other one within the next week or so, I think.
Next week or so?
Yes.
And we will go into closed session to discuss the results of some of those surveys and appraisals.
Are we going to wait for the second one, or are we going to talk about the first one?
I think we should probably start talking about what we have right now.
Yes.
Okay? At closed session, because the
Okay.
contractual information. Okay, so why don't we have the public step forward? Just say your name and your address?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's listed on the brief deck that I put together. Scott Parenti at 221 Claremont Road. I'll just pass a couple to you folks and then to the audience. That's probably plenty. Sorry, I'm not for everyone. Share with your neighbor if you'd like to look at it. Sure. Anyone else? Okay, so I started off when I was looking at this, I didn't have any real reference other than Google Maps. So this picture right here is the best I could do in terms of seeing what 261 looked like and the right-of-way that's already existing there. And I'm putting here that this is the one you should buy. This whole discussion that I'm going to give you this evening is...
There's an extra if someone out there needs one.
Sure, thank you.
Sure.
Is which property is the right property to buy? And from my perspective as a resident, this is not a not in my backyard situation. This is a situation where if you're going to do this, do it the right way and at the most cost beneficial to the township, to the borough. So when you look at these pictures, I want you to think about which is the best property to buy. A property that looks like this on the first picture, that is a beautiful house that may need some updating, but it's beautiful inside. It is, it would be a shame for the township, the borough, to demolish. And I had a question from Ms. Canos on this in a second. It would be a shame to see a destruction of the economic value of something that is in such pristine condition. And then when you go up the road, and this is not a pejorative statement towards the owners of 261, but it has, as long as I've been here, it has been abandoned. I've been lived at 221 Claremont Road for 3 years now, and it strikes me when you're looking at a building, which of the two makes the most sense to purchase for public use? One that's in a varying state of decay, disrepair, abandonment from my perspective, or one that's been on the market, and I don't know for how many days, for a year, whatever. Which one makes the most sense? A house that, and I kind of summarize these statements on the, sorry, no page numbers, but, you know, which property or home is best suited for the purchase of a public use? A property that has 3,500 square feet of usable living space, that has a beautiful pool. I did a quick search. It's listed as the 10 fabulous mid-century homes for the borough.
How long has 251 been on the market?
April.
251 April?
Bill, can you tell me?
Approximately, yeah.
April.
April of this year?
I believe it was on multiple times over the last couple of years.
Yes, it's the second
It's
time.
been on and off the market multiple times.
How many is multiple?
5 or 6, and I think it probably goes back 6 to 7 years, I don't know.
6 to 7 years?
It was on, it was off for a while, then it was on. I don't
Okay,
know, it's been on for a while.
all right, so I'm just...
261 people?
It's been on since April.
Yes.
No, 250.
251.
251, okay.
Yeah, I'm asking, yeah, 251 is what I'm asking about, yeah.
Yeah. It's not been on, it's been on less time than the other house has been abandoned, to the best of my knowledge. That property is detailed as a private California ranch with large open living spaces, enormous window walls, overlooking 5 acres. Does that sound like a property that you should be purchasing and demolishing? And I had a question for Ms. Canos. You said the the trust fund was for, the ordinance that was passed, or the referendum that was passed was for construction, renovation, and what was the other? There was 3 you said that the township, or the borough passed, and I apologize for saying that.
Construction, renovation, or repair.
construction, renovation, repair. I don't hear demolition in there. Doesn't sound like that's something.
That's not part of the 20%. That was for the 20% that can be used for smaller projects. The actual trust fund, we would use to purchase the property, and then what the borough is calling soft costs, that 50,000 that was in there, would be for the demolition of it.
And that would be from the coffers of the township or the open space?
The 20% of the open space, the part that's meant to.
No, taking the house down?
Yeah, whose money, are we using open space funds to demolish a pool and a lovely home? I just asked that question, I asked the council to consider that. Then you look at the property that's 2,600 square feet, it's been abandoned, and it's just what's going on. So that brings me to my last point, and that is the township.
Folks, there's seats up front if you'd like to sit.
Has the right, it is an extreme and powerful right of the government that I don't take lightly. But if you have not been successful in your discussions, and there is an appropriate public use and purpose, which this sounds like, and I agreed with the woman that spoke earlier, her recommendations to the council about having a plan and all that. But it's a powerful right, but it may be in this case, this is something you should be exercising. This is a public use. You will be able to get it at a more reasonable, I believe, cost. This is $261. Then a perfectly good property with a pool that's 3,500 square feet. I just ask you to weigh those, which one makes the most sense, and also the one that 261 has a right of way right next to it that you already own. So, to me, as a borough member, property owner, I ask you to use our funds that we have asked you to be in charge of wisely. And in this instance, I'm not sure it is a wise decision to purchase a perfectly good piece of property and then to demolish it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? State name and address, please.
Jamie Vieser, 124 Valentine Road. Can I get a show of hands from people on the council who've been to Peters Tract and walked the property? Okay, so
I could see your name, sir.
Sorry. And can I get a show of hands of people who've seen the development plan for Peters Tract and know what the cost is?
We have no.
There's no development plan.
There's no development plan for Peters Tract.
Okay, so as a
Passive
fiduciary,
recreation.
you're spending the town's resources on a piece of land and you have no idea of what you're going to do with it or what it's going to
It
cost.
could potentially be developed in the future, but the problem is we need access to Peters Tract, and this is the only way we can acquire access to Peters Tract is to purchase one of these two properties.
Okay, one has been on the market for 7 years and one has been on the market for 4 years.
We've made every attempt to purchase to 261.
Okay, so that to me sounds like another Dryden Road proposition where, you know, someone affiliated with the council is somehow being enriched by this transaction. Right? It's no surprise that a former council member is a realtor on the tract is being contemplated to be purchased.
I have nothing to say to that.
Okay. Well, it's surprising to me that you're proposing spending, you know, potentially millions of dollars of the town's money without a development plan for that. You know, I think if you look at the town is already failing. If you look at the downtown, stores are closed. If you look at the property tax base, it's shrinking. If you look at the assessed values on the mountain, they're shrinking. There's 7, 8, 9 years of inventory of homes on the mountain. If you take the time to look at, you know, homes that are on the market and what their assessed values are, there are 20 or 30 homes on the mountain that are being offered for well below the assessed values. So I think, you know, you're looking at a tax base that's going to continue to shrink. You're talking about spending town's money not only to buy the property, to develop the property, but to maintain the property going forward. So you're talking about continue to shrink the property tax base. You're talking about increasing the town's expenses. So I think, you know, that there should be a greater debate about how the money is going to be used, and I've got to assume that there are better ways that the town can spend this money to actually increase the property tax base of the town and things that are going to have a greater impact on the town. I mean, go by Peter's track almost every day. It's, there's very little usable land. It's not a flat piece of land. There's wetlands on it, everything else. So I would propose a lot more people spend time going and walking. The people who've been on the property, I've never seen a trail. So I think, if people actually go spend the time and decided that's a useful place to spend $2 or $3 million of the town's money between what you're going to pay for it and what you're going to spend developing it, then, God bless the town.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to address questions about property tax base, I took a look at the assessed value for the 251 property, and as a percentage of the total property tax base, it's 0.04% of the property tax base in town. So just to characterize it, what magnitude of it.
Okay. Anybody else?
My name is George Peterson. I live at 301 Claremont Road. Before I make any comments, I'm just wondering if Mr. Parenti, is your house adjacent to 251?
No, it is not.
Do you abut on Peters Park, Peters Track?
No, I do not.
Thank you. It's been very clear to me that we're rushing into a storm we know nothing about. I'm shocked that there's so few that only the board that are actually have seen property, and yet are making a decision about how it's going to be added to an inventory of properties for the town. The absolutely first thing anybody does, a businessman and the other, is draw a plan. How are you going to use it? What is the cost of maintaining it as well? Are there any groups that are going to accept responsibility for working with the town to try and take that under a project for them? Some environmental groups. Do we know about any of those? What do we do when some young girl gets raped in the park and there are no police around? And it was an unfortunate thing, you have people having fun there, and something bad happened. How will we be able to protect people that are going there? This is a key question. Because every park, and this will be looked at as a park, is open to the public. Anybody. Not just people in the borough who are all upstanding citizens, but the general public of the United States. All would have access for one reason or another that they might go there. Additionally, the cost of the property that is going to be purchased, whichever one takes, is money that could be used more effectively, in my mind, for existing properties that the town owns and maintaining them.
As was pointed out, that we actually can't use the acquisition portion of the fund for maintaining properties. The acquisition, the 20% that the Open Space Committee talked about, that money is pretty much used as we go to maintain the properties that we have. The monies that would be spent in acquiring this or any other piece of property cannot be used to maintain, develop, or enhance an existing property. The ordinance that was passed, or the referendum that passed, setting aside the open space money, was for the acquisition of property, period. You can't use it to pave a road, you can't use it to pay for any other borough expenses, you can't use it for anything other than acquiring open space.
Thank you. That, of course, raises a major point. How will the town maintain this property?
With the 20% portion.
No, we can't. If I can just clarify, we can't maintain, we can develop.
Sorry.
And there's a distinction.
Yeah.
With Mary Jane, it's got to be a capital type expense, as Mary Jane.
Yes.
Well, there are two ways of looking at maintenance. One is the property the town would buy. Number two is securing the park to be used for recreation and avoiding unfortunate incidents there. Having some kind of way of policing it, of maintaining it as an area that is not just set aside, but actively used by the town. And that takes planning. And again, it goes back to having some environmental groups that are willing to take that job. So I'm afraid that we're putting a cart before the horse in the sense that, sure, this property is available, but others will come up. That's for sure. And when they do, if we're well prepared, we can go ahead and move the troops in, so to speak, and make it a viable park that would be safe and a pleasure to use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Eric Young. I live at 157 Mine Mount Road. I'm going to keep my comments relatively brief. I think people that spoke before me have had some very interesting points to make. I'm relatively new to Bernardsville. This is actually the first time that I've ever been to one of these events, but I've spent the past few weeks at least trying to canvass neighbors, friends, people who have done this before, understanding the process, and I think that unfortunately the person who just spoke really kind of hit the main point that I want to make, that is, I work, for example, for a business where we have a one-day plan, we have a 30-day plan, we have a 5-year plan, and the key here is planning. And there's been a lot of work that's been done since 1998 on developing how this community ultimately evolves, how we maintain the balance between being our own community, yet a commuter community to New York City. We've got plenty of open space. At the same time, Sandy devastated this area, primarily because maybe certain things weren't taken care of. I know, for example, the house that I bought, we have spent a tremendous amount of capital to improve our property to make it basically safe, because quite frankly it was unsafe, simply because of rotten trees, damaged trees. So there's a constant battle that unfortunately you as represented or elected officials, you have a ton of responsibility with input from the community, from people like us. I think everyone in this room is somehow involved in this community, even if it is simply just paying taxes. That's our responsibility. And we entrust all of you with a ton of responsibility to make sure that A, our voices are heard, and that B, you can make an educated decision, hearing views from the left, views from the right, from the center, from the back. And the key point that I want to make is, it does not seem like enough due diligence has been done on this. I understand this is a piece of property that is already in the stable of properties. So if it means that we have some type of open forum, a referendum, quite frankly, this was really the first time that I was made aware of the open fund, and I'm not going to get all of these terms correct, but ultimately it is fantastic. A lot of towns don't have the capabilities that we have. At the same time, we don't have unlimited resources. Clearly you hear people that are frustrated. This is a high tax base. We all choose to live here. This is also, I will tell you, when we may have gotten a little bit of a tax break here, but ultimately, living in New Jersey with property taxes, we're going to start to feel this in 2019. It's when it comes time to pay your taxes in April, there are going to be some people that go, I really thought I got a tax break, but I didn't get a tax break because we cannot deduct all of our property taxes. And so ultimately, the key is that we don't have unlimited funds. Let's make sure that we're doing everything from A to Z to make sure that this is the right way to spend the town's money. This property, at least looking on Zillow 5 minutes ago, this thing's been on the market since 2013. that may be a valid point to you, it may not be. But ultimately, the key is we have something that we already own in the form of Peters Tract. However, there are serious obstacles to make it usable. So let's look at the other pieces of property that are already in the stable that we own today and figure out what is the best use of that. Let's use this 20% to figure out, is there a better use? Maybe there isn't a better use. My quick assessment says there probably is, because there's a 95-page document that's sitting out there on the internet where you can basically see everything. You can see how much has been set aside every year for this. You can see this, I understand, this was the #1 item on the mid-range plan from 2 years ago when it was updated. The key point that I really want to make is, I would implore you, let's make sure that we're doing this the right way. Let's measure twice and cut once. Because ultimately, the last thing, with no plan, the last thing that we want to wind up with is spending $950,000, then we spend money on consultants to figure out that we actually don't have something that is usable for everyone. The key is making it usable for everyone. I will tell you, quite frankly, with 491 acres at Natterar and Jockey Hollow, a lot of people are going to go to those two places. This is a 30-acre tract of land. What can we use for more sports, for other things that the community itself can use? We have great facilities around Morris County, Somerset County, Hunterdon County. I am all for, let's make this a better place to live. I personally do not think that spending $950,000 on the front end to buy a piece of property that probably 30 to 40% of that purchase price is going to be for basically the improvements on the land. The land itself has got a tax value of $500 and some odd thousand. This doesn't make great business sense. And so it's not that everyone needs to be a business person, but let's give the community an opportunity. Again, maybe it's referendum, maybe it's in some type of open forum, but let's be more vocal about what we're going to do here, because I think you would probably get some very interesting comments from people. Again, some proponents, some opponents, but hear everyone's voice. And that is the key, that's the key message, I think, more than anything. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Kathy Redling, 211 Claremont Road. I want to thank the Open Space Committee especially for the clarification and the information they shared, and especially for their recommendations that are much in line with the Environmental Commission. A couple of things you may or may not be aware of. There are 4 properties that abut on Claremont Road to Peters Tract. They are 233 Claremont Road, 251, 261, and 281.
Hold on, I'm sorry, go slow.
233, Chris, yeah.
Hold on 1 second. These are properties that do what to Peters Tract?
Abut
Okay.
Peters Tract.
Go ahead.
233,
Okay,
251, 261, and 281.
thank you.
All are approximately 5 acres. The land assessment on all of them, as the gentleman said, is about 500,000 variant. Okay? 233 was on the market in 2011 through 2013. It was sold on July 26, 2013 for $550,000. If it was so important, the borough had the opportunity at that point to purchase it. I don't know whether it was ever considered or what. 261, as people have stated, has been on the wish list for more than that 6-7 years. Okay? 251 has never been on the wish list. It's been occupied. It's been on and off, as we've talked about, for multiple years. I live at 211, so I've known basically what's gone on. It's been on and off the market and dropped almost $200,000 in price. I'm not sure the exact figures. 261, we're all familiar that we've tried to get to. You've also all recently seen the September 18th, or September 13th, excuse me, wetlands assessment. You'll be discussing that later. Next is 281, which the Hollows own, have developed beautifully, and we're not going to be able to afford access through that. And it's nice they're contributing their taxes. One more piece of property, if I don't mind. My neighbors, the Parentes, who, like us, don't abut directly onto Peters Tract. They bought their house in 2013. Same 5 acres, 4 bedroom, 3 bath. They have a 2-car garage. They only have 4.19 acres though, because we're R1A not the full 5-acre zone. If you don't mind, they paid $715,000 for it. That's what the going rate, give or take, is. They have a pool. They have beautiful property. Theirs does not abut, but they have a beautiful sloped bed. And I'm sorry, hindsight, if you all came out and looked, 233 would have been the ideal property if you could never have gotten 261 because of the really nice slope going up and into the property. From a conservation standpoint, 251 has a lot of trees on it. We don't encourage residents to take down trees. We're setting a bad example if we take down many trees to create parking and paths. And that is basically a summary of my thoughts, but I would like to be able to have more of my peers get into Peters Track. I have access to it because I can walk there. And maybe it's not just walking trails, maybe it's horseback riding trails. Set ourselves out a little bit different. But I don't think tennis courts are a good idea.
Anybody else in the public?
Okay, my name is Amir Holu. I live at 281 Claremont Road, as this lady pointed out before me.
Can you spell your last name, sir?
Hollo, first name Erno.
Thank you. And you live at
281 Claremont Road.
Thank you.
I have the blessing and I have the curse of living next to this. The curse is not that I'm here today and you guys have these plans. I moved there 26 years ago, and you know, it's unfortunately one of my family members suffered very greatly from Lyme disease because, you know, we were all outdoorsy and very often walked through that. I'm in the animal health care field, and my dog, what I just lost, 15 years of age, on the average was treated 2.5 times per year for tick-borne disease. So I would highly discourage any of the public members to walk this park unless if they want to risk their life. Very interesting, the lady who spoke before me, I know professionally that she very much cares about her dogs. Very often, most of the time I see her walking on a Claremont Road, you know, it's fighting the traffic instead of, you know, it's going to this beautiful open land behind because she knows what's the safer for her animal. But you know, back to this property purchase. I know really well how the property looks like. I think it's not suitable for a park. Just like as they pointed it out before me, we have beautiful walking parks what people can enjoy. If we have plans to develop this, I would feel bad that 20 years ago, Mr. Wieser's predecessor, Mr. Eckert, was put through the grinders by the town, that he basically clear-cut 10 acres. I think the town would set a very bad example to damage or cut down all these beautiful trees. Did you guys ever consider the expense, what it would cost to level that park or, you know, that landscape to make it usable for even just for walking trails? What would be the expense? You know, back to the other topics, I think this town needs some uplift and improvement to make it more attractive, that people will move in here and they will buy our properties because a lot of us want to move away from here eventually. So I think it would be better spent on areas like closer to the town and to the police where they can keep an eye on it and the maintenance is going to be less expensive. So I think, you know, the take-home message is here that, you know, the residents of Bernardsville work very hard to pay their taxes. I'm on a medical field. I don't have a lot of business training like some of the people around here, but a very famous banker gave me an advice when they came to this country that it's very easy to be successful in this country. Just work hard and save. I think our town residents are working very hard to paying their taxes. Your duty to save this money and don't burn the pocket that we need to spend it right away. We need to find a more suitable land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Peter?
Sure. In the interest of time, some of these answers could be done with just a couple words or even one word. So I have a different perspective because I've been involved in open space, and it would be nice to have access to this in a more pleasurable way, and something that is less intrusive by, you know, having to go up around Young's Road, which is our own private road, and would be very costly if we ever had to go that way. Not very desirable for most people that live there or even the town. I mean, it's my comments are more about not the what, but the how. The how is very disconcerting, which is the process, and this has come forward in a huge rush, which is unusual for this town or most properties, unless there is a valid competitive offer on the plate, and there's a special process with the Green Acres in such cases where you can work something out with them because of the time is of the essence type issues. So I think it is, it does provide good access. It would be unfortunate because it is the type of house that would be desirable with open floor plans, and the modern family style, living style is more that way. But as I understand from my neighbor who is renting their house, nothing in over 500,000 is really moving very quickly in the state since the new tax act. Maybe that'll be remedied at some point, but in the meantime, that's the reality. So things aren't moving well. It is clearly a buyer's market. Someone already asked how many people have visited. It's 2/3, which is not bad given the history. It'd be nice if more people came out to spend this kind of money, especially since it's such a rush. I would like to know if there are any conditions in the contract that can give the town the ability to back out if the contract is being considered on a vote tonight.
There are two contingencies. One is the adoption of the ordinance appropriating the money.
Well, that's kind of implicit.
Well, it's explicit.
Well, I mean, if you know, I'm
understand.
talking about the actual contract itself, Jack, not the vote. If you had the vote, is there anything that could keep the contract?
Environmental contingencies.
Environmental, nothing else.
Those are the two.
Okay, in the past, I think we had other contingencies maybe, I can't recall, since we've got backed out of other contracts.
No, I don't think so.
In acquiring this land, is it being restricted to passive as we, as the council did in response to some concerns of the public underwriting which did not pass, but we did hold that up so that it would be clearly labeled as passive as opposed to passive or active. Is it restricted in any way?
Not right now. It's
No,
not written in
so
the-
it can be passive, it can be active, whatever somebody decides to do down the line. Okay, that would be, I mean, given the, well, okay. Has 261 been contacted since the rapid interest in 251 to begin a bargaining process, since it is a buyer's market and neither property is moved? Has 251 been contacted in sort of a last-ditch effort to say, hey, you know, this other property is available, we're going to buy it unless you want to make us an offer? I guess the answer is no.
We've been in constant contact with 261. Jack has been in contact with it.
So since this contract has been negotiated, you've had discussions with them over price?
I don't know, have we, Jack?
No,
I mean,
I don't think over price.
No pricing discussions. So you haven't had a lever to go back to 251 and suggest that maybe you'll buy the other property unless they come down with the price.
what's the implication, Peter?
Well, if you're not setting up a very strong bargaining position in the market, which is a
We have-
seller's market where sellers don't have any leverage whatsoever, you have two properties that would be perfectly suitable and have been, especially one that's been researched to death next to it, that you want to put these people next to each other because it's kind of like a fiduciary responsibility to do something on the best.
I don't know who's made any decisions. I'm waiting for the appraisal still to come back yet.
No, if you vote on this thing tonight, you can make the purchase.
Okay.
So
But
either you defer it.
until we get appraisals back, I don't think there's any voting going to happen until we get appraisals. I mean, at least not for me. I want to see appraisals. So,
Either way, it seemed to be appropriate and fiduciary responsibility to try and do a bargain.
I hear what you're saying, but okay, step at a time, that's all.
But you've rushed ahead and you've presented this contract.
I haven't rushed on anything.
The council has. You all voted for it.
Okay, I wasn't here for that one, actually, but that's okay.
Well, it's done.
It's okay, continue.
Okay.
It's gone through one reading, no, Jack? Just one reading.
Tonight's the second reading and it was.
Yeah, tonight is, but
it was
it's been
deferred at
voted
your last
once.
week. It was deferred at your last meeting.
Yes.
So it's up for a vote.
Yes, but it hasn't been voted on. It wasn't voted on.
No, but it's a rather final decision if it's voted on and ratified.
Okay.
there was a meeting of open space, and people noticed that there was a major plan which had been on the wall in the open space meeting room for quite some time that disappeared. It was something that was drafted 30 or 40 years ago with Peter's Tract and being a active recreation park. And that disappeared. I don't know if that's material, but it is interesting that it's borough property, and while we're having a discussion, that disappeared. Just a comment. Nothing to say on that. Other than the concern that it is active or passive, maybe that should be determined. The council had some discussion, I guess, at some point in appointing a real estate agent to be a representative. The borough has retained some, but the Bank Conservative in New Jersey, who's negotiated on behalf of a number of towns over many years, probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions. Is there a reason why it was decided that it was really beneficial to have a realtor on this property versus others, and not using our free counsel that we already pay for? Was there discussion, and can you share it with that?
Because the property wasn't presented from the open space, it was presented from a realtor to us.
I don't think it binds you to appointing a realtor.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe that binds you to appoint a realtor, but
We didn't appoint a realtor, he approached us.
I thought that there was something.
Yes, and we retained him as our real estate agent for this property, for the discussions with the owner.
I don't think we did. Jack?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
But Aaron's part of this.
And Aaron's involved in
Aaron's
it.
been
Aaron
involved
is
in all
also
this
involved in it
I'm
for
just
the
trying
land
to find out if there's a
conservancy
rationale
point
for
of view.
appointing someone. That's
But
all.
also is he approached the borough plan?
Yeah. he's-
Okay.
Right.
All right. So, I mean, the property definitely meets many needs. The property really should be opened up so there's access. I know the planning board has always been concerned that the borough has property and hasn't done anything with it, which is no longer true. That's kind of been wiped out over the last few years. But it would be easier to have access, certainly for the general public and many of the residents around the property, if it were from Claremont Avenue. It's easier to find, easier to work with. The value, I don't know how the value is negotiated. There's really no basis. I believe it's $900,000. Okay. So, other than a realtor's opinion, which according to the real estate licensing examining people, when you get licensed, the realtor does not provide a valuation. They come up with a price that they think something might be marketed at, but there's not a valuation for any transactional purposes, green acres, estate tax, or anything else. Assessment is also kind of a moving target. It's a better reference point, but assessments are not true values legally or in any other way. So it seems like an odd price, and as many people have already said, it seems rather high. And if we haven't been bargaining, maybe it is. Other parcels. The borough does have other parcels. There are some other properties. We don't have to buy the whole thing. The borough has many powers to make things available for the public's best interest, and that's what you're all charged with having the power to do. Condemnation is not a fun thing. I'm not really in favor of it, but I understand the Green Acres realizes that sometimes you have to do condemnation to get access to a property. So that's not, should not be a force of pressure to buy this immediately. In terms of everything being done, Mr. DeLeo, you said that everything's been done 261. I'm not sure that's really accurate, but we've already discussed that. And finally, the optics of having a realtor appointed who served on this council with me and looked at properties with me is great. That he has some experience. I think the optics are a little bit awkward given his career being in real estate and also be associated with a party that nominates people for office, and it's hard to get elected as a Republican without them. I'm not saying anything wrong, I'm just saying the optics are awkward, and had I been there, I might have voted otherwise. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
name is Amanda Falk, and I live at 50 Post Coonhurt Road in Bernardsville. And I'm not for the purchase, and I just wanted to bring up the safety, obviously, but also the long term of the upkeep of the property and how are we going to come up with that money, and that is a lot of money and a lot of upkeep, so I would just like to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, good evening. Paul Sedlak, 5 Charlotte Hill. Hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving holiday. My comments are not specific to this piece of property here, but it's something on the overall view of the need in this town as we try to revitalize this town. I think you all know and agree, we have many conversations in meetings, conversations at the ShopRite, what have you, that we're having challenges with our real estate values. They're going down, they're not stabilizing, and they're continuing to go down. And it's a multifaceted issue. There is no single bullet to this. It's it's education, it's infrastructure, it's parks, it's recreation, it's the downtown. It's many, many pieces. And I want you all just to be thinking about this, not just tactically for where we are, what we're trying to do, but also strategically of where we need to go. How do we make Bernardsville a more desirable town where people want to buy here, and when they want to buy here, it'll stabilize our real estate values, it'll stabilize our tax base, it'll stabilize and hopefully increase our revenue stream. So there's many pieces to this. So when we start thinking about our parks and recreation, per our master plan and open space recreation report that was published in October 2016, it's on the borough website, for a population of just under 7,800 residents, 2014 number, 65.9 acres of parks and recreation are recommended for our population. We only have 50.9 existing. That's actually overstating the parks and recreation we have in our town, because that includes the 15 acres for the high school. You really shouldn't even be including that. So as we think strategically about our town and what we're doing for parks and recreation, both passive and active, we really have to realize that at a minimum, we are 30 acres underserved to our residents.
And 30 acres of that is inaccessible.
Correct.
Correct.
Right. So you take that, now we're over 60 acres of shortage for our residents. So again, when residents or buyers are looking to buy to our town, where's your parks? Where's your recreation? Where's your jogging path? Where can I take my 5-year-old to learn how to ride a bike? They're going over to Harry Dunham Park, Pleasant Valley Park, they're going somewhere else. So when they're going somewhere else, it's well, why am I buying here? Let me buy somewhere else. So these are just things we have to think about. So I'm not advocating for or against this particular track. There's a lot more due diligence work that I trust the experts are all going to get involved in. But we have to think about what we need to do for our town, because it is part of the fiber of revitalizing our town and making it a place where people want to be. By having people play where they live and not going to Morristown or going to Peapack Gladstone or going to some other place, it starts building and creating the fiber of our community where people network. When my daughter was growing up, I know more people from Baskin Ridge, because where do we go? Harry Dunham Park. And that's where you meet people and that's where you socialize. Where does someone spend some of their time? So again, when you take a look at even our 2017 Master Plan Reexamination, on the section of providing open space and recreation, quote, this concern remains. The Planning Board continues to work with the Open Space Committee to draft an open space, trails, recreation, and park plan. I underscore the following. Sufficiency of active recreation areas remains a major issue. So again, I implore you to think about strategically of where we are and where we need to go. I'm not advocating for or against this piece of property. A lot more work has to be done. But I want you to make sure you're thinking about what we need to do strategically to make Bernardsville a desirable place to be, which will stabilize and increase our real estate values. And when it does that, it will increase your tax ratables and your revenue stream. So we're not always cutting costs, because you can't continue to keep cutting costs. We have to address our revenue line. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Kay Alberti. I live at 80 Post Coonhurt Road. And I'd like to say, I raised 4 children here, and we did okay with the parks we had. We really enjoyed a lot of the area. The high school has quite a few fields now, and they're very active. The thing I'm more concerned about is the downtown, and what can we purchase down there to make a simple park for people, or a place for the high school kids to go to. That's my concern right now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Christina Malchiani, and I live at 51 Post Lane. And my concern, I echo what a lot of the concerns, safety, and also my question is more if the fund is used for the acquisition, the cost to demolish the trees, to make the walking tracks, to provide safety, is going to come from the town's tax dollars, or the town's top dollars. And I think if you take a look at our downtown, our train station, and that is where in my opinion, the town's money is best spent. And I just would like to go on record as vehemently opposing this purchase. And I would also like to see a show of hands of anybody else who also is opposed, just so you can have an idea of the people in this room who are also against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi everyone, Ned Ginty, 122-2 Young Road. I'll keep it brief. You guys can have looked at the last session where I was speaking before. My biggest concern, as you all know, are the athletic facilities for our children. And knowing that there's going to be potentially another competitive resource for the 20% of maintenance, basically not being able to be used, in a complete way for the existing facilities that we have, concerns me. I think it should be better used for the facilities that we have, the baseball fields, the improvement and expansion of the Polo Grounds Veterans Field, getting a youth field hockey program going, and making sure the field at Veterans Field has the lines for that. So basically my biggest concern is that we are not maximizing the existing fields and recreational facilities for the kids in our town, who will be using those in greater numbers than the small amount of people that will be using the Peters Track. Now, full disclosure, I live right next to Peters Track. I know that property probably better than anybody in this property other than Ernie and Jamie and John. It is a quagmire of brambles, rotted wood, sinkholes, puddles, ticks, you name it, right? I know it well because I have two dogs that have run through there and chased them for hours trying to get it, and I agree, it is a tick heaven. It'll take an incredible amount of money to spend on that piece of property to clear it and make it usable, and I'm not in favor of using $1 of that 20% to use for anything other than what we currently have for the use of, for our children to use recreational facilities. The last point I would make, and I made this at the last meeting, is that if we beautify our recreational facilities, and I mean athletic facilities, the baseball fields, the football fields, the soccer fields, the lacrosse fields, you name it, and they are used in a way where the maximum amount of people in town can use them, and they are put in or structured in a way that we can use them for clinics and camps and birthday parties and anything else, even the limited amount of the 20% that you would use for those recreational facilities can come back to the community as it relates to revenue, all right? And then we can build this pool of assets even more to figure out what else we could use it for. So my point is, there's a better use for this money, right? I know we can't use this open space as $950,000 or so to create some new stadium, right? I get that. But if we are narrowing the amount of money that our existing athletic fields can use of that 20%, I think we're doing a disservice to our kids, because it's 150 kids on the youth football program, okay? It's a multiple of that on the baseball program and lacrosse programs, and those are 150 kids or so that are using those facilities every day, not maybe a dozen or so that could be using walking trails a couple of times a day. Okay, so that's my biggest issue. I do believe it is not my backyard issue, a little bit, because it's my backyard, right? I have 3 young children, okay? I have a 7-year-old daughter, and there is nobody in this town that's going to say to me that you are going to protect my 7-year-old daughter when there are going to be people, strangers there, This is not the Audubon Society. This is not Dunham Park. Those are clear spots. These are deep, densely wooded areas with lots of uneven ground, and it only takes one time for my daughter or my little kids to be in trouble, and I will come back here with a far different tone.
Anybody else?
John Ruprecht, 122-3 Young Road. Yes, my property is adjacent to Peters Park or Peters Tract, and just a couple of things. And I know, Mary Jane, I know you mentioned about a buffer. Okay, I want you to consider this. We have a 30-acre property here, not a 300-acre property. You're gonna put a buffer. What is considered to be, what's the definition of a proper buffer around that property to kind of seclude it from the adjacent properties?
I don't know if there's a certain guideline, but I know like if you go to, there's a park in Morristown that if you're walking on the trail, you're right in people's backyards. You ever been on that one? It's
No, I haven't. But
it goes from the stables all the way over to the line of the park.
Patriots have.
And that's the kind of thing we don't want. I don't want a path at the end of my property, but if there's 100, like we use for, I've had hunters back there that I can see. But I think it's, 150 foot for a hunter? So, something like that.
yeah, well, I just am wondering because by the time you put a buffer around a 30-acre property, what's left?
And I think it depends on, I have so many Burberry, nobody's coming through that, but.
Okay, so.
Depends on the kind of, how thick the.
I think that's one of the things that, depending on where this goes, that we need to look at and how we're gonna buffer the surrounding properties. After all, and I did mention this last time when I was up here, people purchase properties up there for privacy. It's a private road that we live off of, some of us. Okay, we purchased for privacy. Now all of a sudden, we're opening it up, and we're just getting up all kinds of, town folks is great. Who knows who else is coming in here, because everybody's gonna be welcome from anywhere to come in and walk this property. I also talked to Kevin Valentine, and I said to him, Kevin, patrolling this property, well, do the police go in there, or how do they patrol this property? No. The police will not go in and patrol this property. So, again, the question that I raised, and I'm not looking for an answer right now, how do we protect the people around it? Safety. The last thing that I just want to mention, it's just something to consider, and I don't know the legalities of this. A referendum was passed to collect this money. Well, maybe at this point, since we have other, maybe more important uses of this money, maybe we have to have a referendum to reallocate this money. Okay? So maybe that's something we need to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
All right, a couple more and then we'll wrap it up. I think we got the feeling for the crowd.
Good evening, John Zazio, 69 Roman Road. I do not live, I don't abut the property at all. I'm confused about a lot of things here because to me, there's a lot of simplicity to looking and making a purchase of what your objectives are. And I'd ask the board, what are our objectives? What are your objectives for spending this money? You're a steward of money that was made available. It's not your money, it's not my money. You're a steward for the townspeople. So I would ask, what's your objective? Is it active or passive?
Our number one objective is to have access to Peters Track. We don't, no, the town doesn't have access to Peters Track. That's
For
number
what
one.
purpose?
Passive recreation at this point.
See, that's where I get confused. I hear walking trails, I hear, and then I hear
That
tennis
is
court,
passive.
then I hear, well, it's not necessary, will this ordinance define that it's only passive use?
No, it won't.
Then
It's
who
for the
would
purchase
have
of
the
the property.
ability to change what you said, it's only active, it's only passive? Because I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing walking trails, passive, and there are all sorts of issues with those. Safety, police, all of that. But I go back to a simple question, which is, what is the intent to use it for? And I look at this from my perspective, I don't abut it. I view this as a Trojan horse to try and get a tract of land that no one has had any idea around developing a business plan around on what they want to do with it, and find ourselves in a circumstance where we've committed significant resources. In addition to the resources of the 20% money that's available for maintenance, now we got to maintain this property, and it becomes this Trojan horse for some other objective that nobody here is going to have any ability to come and have a conversation with, because all we're going to be told is the ordinance was passed and we can do with it what we please, past it or after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
One more, how about that?
Better make it two.
Two? Okay, two more.
Hi, I'm Patty DeLeo, 69 Minot Road, Bernardsville. I'm part of the Open Space Committee, and I can tell you, I believe Christine Zamora, Councilwoman Zamora, addressed what our goals and objectives of this whole piece of property are, and how it aligns with what Open Space has been charged with over the years. So I don't know if you were, I was not in attendance at the last meeting, I don't know of those who were, but it may, it may be something that you want to post on the site so everyone is aware of it. The question I have for the council though is, today we have trails that Peter, and Group and Open Space have put in place today. There is no police monitoring, there's no walking through. My home used to back up, I lived in London, backed up to Patriots Path. There were no police access to that either. It went right through my yard. The buffer, as Mary Jane said, it was set back a property, like no one could come on, 25 feet of the yard or whatever it may be. What are the parameters, like how do we monitor the existing trails we have today? Does Kevin have? We don't.
No, we put them in, nobody
And has there
complained,
ever
they
been-
go up from town, up through Laurelwood, and then when we finish it up, it'll come up to Roundtop.
Okay, so
Nobody
that's-
complained,
Okay, so that's never been, okay.
never been a problem.
And then the only other point I want to make is, Mr. Ginty referenced the fact that, it's the kids within the community, but our community is made up of people of all different family makeups. Some are, single individuals living in this community, especially now as the real estate is changing and we're seeing condos and apartments and all of that change. We're bringing in younger people, that's the goal, that's what I hear from Mr. Rossi, that's what I hear from Mr. Conti, we're trying to bring that in. Mr. Conti's going for the older individual who their families have flown the coop. Open Space needs to serve that community as well, and we need to make sure we have things for everyone. So I just ask you to keep that all in mind as you vote, whether it's tonight or going forward.
Thank you. One more? All right, two more. Come on, Skip, you go last.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danielle Ginty, should I go there or am I okay here?
It's better actually if you come here.
My name is Danielle Ginty, and I guess you figured that out, I'm Ned Ginty's wife. So I live at 122-2 Young Road. I wanted to go on record to say that I obviously do have the fears. I didn't initially. My very first thought when this was put into my head was, oh cool, I'd be able to walk out there and travel it. And then as I did some research, as I looked into it, I saw people talking, I realized that it's more than just walking trails, that particular one. I actually was here 3 years ago, I guess, or a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, because the hunters were coming and I was terrified that my kids were going to get hit by a gun because they go out there. We have a dirt road right along our border of our house. When we moved in there 7 years ago, it was clear. It went all the way to the back of our property to some barn back there, which is storage. I'm assuming a lot of it was sandy. Some of it is all this ash borer. I mean, we had the tree people come. It is a disaster back there now. 3 years ago, I bought a dog. He was an escape artist. He would go through there, or she would go through there, take my dogs. I could not get through. I've walked I don't know where you walked in Peter's Track, but you can't walk through it all. So I'm on the Young Road side. I know that you can't go through that way. It is so full of sticker bush, or whatever those things are called. I called one of the hunters today, actually, to say, all the bubble is talking about how square this piece of property is. It's not square. It's square on a map, but it's not square in terms of what's usable. It's like hills and water. It's the middle. I asked this hunter, I said, just tell me, you go further, and he said, yeah, I go about 300 yards in, and he was baffled at the fact that people would want to make this walking trails. He said, it's really quite narrow, and I put that on the bubble. I've heard it's narrow, a hunter, blah, 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 and they're like, well, who's the unnamed hunter? And I have his name if it matters, but, and he said, it's very narrow. He said, the parts that you could actually do, the lower part is in Peter's Track. He said, he said, 25% of that is sticker bush, and he said, you can't get through it. He said, we find our way, and then we plant ourselves. He said he doesn't go further than 300 because they'll shoot the deer up that way. My understanding was that when I drove around, it was probably that 251 that a couple had called me and said, your dogs are here. They're covered in ticks. No kidding, all right. But you can't use it. Don't think of it as a square, as that big square you see on a map. It's not. The part that you could actually make walking trails is very narrow down the middle. And not only that, but you keep talking about how you wouldn't access Young, but who's going to stop? If there's trails there, who's going to stop them from coming right through? Unless you leave all the sticker bushes, which is fine. I don't care then. But who's going to stop them from coming through? And who's going to stop them from hanging out? It's not a walk-through then. It's a go in, circle, come back. So I don't like the fact that there would be straight. He terrifies me when he says stuff about rapes and whatever. Yeah, I have little kids. I tell them not to go in there because there's bears, there's snakes, there's whatever is in there. There's foxes, there's all sorts of stuff in there. But there's also trees. There's a lot of trees that have just fallen down that are dangerous. There's some, okay, so when I asked to clear that one road, they quoted me, there was 3 different companies that came by, just that little road up the side. It was almost $10,000 because a lot of the trees are hanging off others, and if they're really going to make it safe, they have to cut them all down, and they're huge, massive. So the clearing of it, I don't know where that goes. The other thing I wanted to ask is the Green Acres person. She said you'd have to complete this in 2 years. That was my understanding once you acquire it. And you don't have a survey. If you've been looking at this property for so long, how come there's been no survey? How come the land and what could have been done with it hasn't been?
I don't, yeah.
Not a type, but
yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
It was
okay,
done in
I'm using,
2016.
And we have
I'm using
corner
the wrong
markers
word.
too.
Not just a survey, but what could
Elevation
be
plan.
used.
There's a topography
Yeah,
map
there is.
also.
Yeah, they have it.
So they know what could be used.
I think so.
Yeah, we have a topography map, and we also have the corners marked on several corners all around the property marked with concrete markers.
And
It was done like 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Sir, good luck finding it. I pointed it out where
We have the GPS location, so it
That's
won't be a
fine, but,
problem.
when you sent out the surveyors, I had to take them, show them where the proper location. They were 100 feet away.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know just on the edge of our border it was the same way. But that's my fears are who's going to stop people from going right through? If nobody monitors it, it's not like Patriots Path where you just go and go and go. It would be like a circle, and it's not that big. And then, of course, I have little kids, so yes, I'm that demographic, and I want something for my boys. So, they weren't able to play on the turf field this year because of the lights and all the rest, which Ned has talked about. So that, is hard as a parent. I'd like something for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Skip? And this will be it?
Thank you. I
I don't know if we can say much more, it's been said already tonight, but I want to read an email that I got from another resident of Bernardsville, and this woman and I were on the Recreation Committee for 11 years. She was chairman at one point, I followed her directly after that, and I was also on Open Space and Recreation during that time. So, she asked me, do we really need to waste time and money on this lot next to Peter's Track? As was pointed out at the last meeting, I can tell you we pointed out even more here, that the next door lot is cheaper and better for parking. She said, don't let us spend good taxpayer money on bad asset. It seems that this open space fund is burning a hole in their pockets. Save it for Rushman's Farm when it's available. You need every dime of it. So, I mean, well, we have 10 named owners, we have 20 named owners, but that's the kind of property that we need to save for open space, and that's how much it's going to cost us. So don't waste another for that.
Okay, that's it. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for your input.
Huh? We only got one.
Does anybody need a break? Or we want to go forward?
I just want some water.
Want to take a break?
Yeah, why don't let everyone clear out? That's a good idea.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. Anthony, 5-minute break. If you don't want to. Okay, so let's go back to ordinances. Okay, so we're going to continue the public hearing, ordinance 18-1783 concerning uses permit in the I Industrial District, amending in Chapter 12 of the Borough Land Development Code entitled Zoning. I want to open the public hearing. No comments? We'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Anthony, roll call.
Mr. DeLeo?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Abstaining, because I'm recused.
Ms. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so the ayes have it. Okay, so our second ordinance is 18-1784, an ordinance prohibiting dogs and other pets on certain borough athletic fields and supplementing and amending Chapter 5 of the Borough Code entitled Animal Control. I'd like to open a public hearing. Skip, step forward.
Okay, thank you. I do have a few comments here. I'm sort of stunned that this was brought up in the first place because I have no idea what the problem is, if there is a problem with dogs on a field. I've been running my dogs on these fields for almost 20 years and I haven't seen a problem. Owners pick up after their dogs every time I've been out there. As for the infields when it's wet, humans, both adults and children, do more damage to the dirt infield than the dogs do. That's not even bringing up what the deer do. So, prohibiting dogs from our turf field, I get that. Dog owners need somewhere in Bernardsville to go with their dogs. We don't need to go to Bernards Township to let our dogs run. Seasonal shutdowns of certain fields make sense, and we have that right now. Most of these fields are used for 2 or 3 months a year. The 4 that are listed there are a perfect example. Why not keep it the same as it's been forever? Let's for once do something positive for our taxpayers. Have doggy waste bags and dispensers at the fields. People will use them and you don't have a problem. I think we need to be more positive than negative about this situation.
Doug, could you list the fields that we're talking about? I know it was the fence ones, but just for everyone to hear it.
Rose Bowl.
Okay.
Claremont, and the 2 Kiwanis baseball fields, the fence portions, the interior portions.
Okay, so other than that,
Also,
go ahead.
the turf field.
Oh, the turf field, yeah.
Right, and the playgrounds should be off limits, but we listed the playground.
Okay.
And the Kiwanis as well, because we do see those.
So the other fields would be,
Polo grounds would remain.
Okay.
Aside from the turf field, that would remain open all year for the dogs, and the areas between the fence in baseball field.
Wait, say that again?
The last part you said, I couldn't hear you.
Area between. The open area between the 2 baseball fields at Kiwanis.
Okay.
That would remain open.
Okay. Skip.
I agree.
Okay. Okay.
For background, how did this get onto our radar? Just
from Doug.
There were, we were observing that there was a lot of dog waste on the fields,
Okay.
and the fields were, when it's wet, a lot of the athletic teams don't actually have games when the field is really bad. And what would happen is, especially in the off-season, the dogs would be running the field. It was too wet for us to get our equipment on it to drag it. We would bury the equipment. Then we get a couple of really warm days, and the infields just get big. And because we don't have a lot of play on them during certain seasons, it's very hard to keep them smooth and keep them in good shape for the kids that are playing baseball.
For the dog waste part, do we or could we ever look into the price of the little bags, little dispensers you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. You think they'd be used if we put them out there? Who owns dogs other than Skip? Would you use the bags? Oh, okay.
Responsible dog owners always bring waste bags with them.
Responsible
dog owners always have a waste bag.
Always bring their own?
And whether they use them or not, if you don't have one, you don't tend to use them.
Township at their dog park, that's what they have, and they are used.
I would hope they're at a dog park. Yeah, but yeah.
It's easy to not use them though, and when kids are playing, it's pretty bad.
Right.
And
I
it really does.
was just thinking it's more of a reminder if it's there, I really should be doing this, and oops, I forgot it. Oh, here they are. So, can we look into that, Doug, see what they cost?
We can get dispensers, that's not.
All right.
Let's see what they cost.
Let's see what they cost, get a quote, and then we can revisit that.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.
Anybody else? No? Did we vote on that? I can't remember.
We did not vote. Anybody else before we close that? Okay.
Okay, so I will close the public hearing. Motion to pass?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, Anthony?
Ms. Lamara?
I'd like to just, we're passing it as is without adding that we're gonna provide any kind of dog beds or anything like that, we're just.
Well, we can't add that now, right?
That doesn't have to be in the ordinance.
But we can always add that later. If Doug comes back and they're, I don't know, I'm making this up, they're $50 a piece, and we're gonna buy 10 of them, and we'll put them in various places. I don't think we need to amend it for that, do we, Jack?
No.
Okay, we'd just be making an improvement.
Yes,
Okay.
And this doesn't go into effect until we put up signs.
That's correct.
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
yes.
Mr. DeLeo?
Yes. Okay, that's it. We'll move on to resolutions.
No.
You should let the public know what you're doing with the ordinance.
Oh, okay. All right, we have to discuss the contract for the Open Space Trust Fund, and we won't probably vote on it tonight if we come out of open.
Is there?
We
We
have
need to tell
contract
them if we're
negotiation.
going to possibly do it or not. We need
Yes,
to,
correct.
we need to say, we either say we're not going to vote on it, or we say we might vote on it.
Right. Let the public tell it.
Okay, so we are not going to vote on it tonight.
I think that's the right course.
So then, should we move
They
to
should
the
move
next
to
meeting?
Continue the public hearing on the ordinance until December 10th.
10th.
With no further notice.
Well-
Is that what,
And will you have your appraisals by then?
Well, that's what I'm gonna say. At minimum, until I see the second appraisal, I'm not making anything.
Yeah.
So I wanna see the second
If you carry
appraisal.
the meeting at least till the end of the year, then you have to start over.
okay.
Right, so upon receiving of the appraisal, then we can make another date, but I don't even think we wanna pick that until that comes in.
But you have to
But you have to
continue it
insert-
to a
We
date
have to
certain,
continue
so
it
you're
one
gonna have to
meeting at a time.
republish it, start again.
Okay, well, then we'll,
I would ask that you move until after the holidays. So you're.
What I heard is
certain
we
that you have
can't do, what I heard is we can't do that. We can move it to the next meeting.
That's right, you would have to reject the ordinance
That's
this
fine.
year.
We're gonna move it to the next meeting.
We will. So, should I make a motion to move it to the next meeting, John?
Any of you can make a motion to continue the public hearing on the ordinance with no further notice of publication. It will be heard at.
Tom, you wanna make a motion?
December 10th at 7 o'clock.
I'll move that we move it to December 10th.
second.
Roll call?
Oh, you get a second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was, who's second, I'm sorry.
Second was Schmidt.
Mr. DeLeo?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, may I just make one more comment?
Sure, Paula.
It's not just that, Paula Stewart, 76 Mount Harmony Road, it's not just the obtaining the appraisals, it's submitting them to Green Acres and getting back from Green Acres what they certify to as the market value. It isn't necessarily that they would agree, even though the appraisers are on their list, and there is I'm assuming that you used people that were on their list.
It's the same appraiser from the other property, so yes, it is the,
Okay,
yes.
but it's that certification that you're really after, because without that, you don't get reimbursed the proper amount.
I wasn't saying the whole thing like that, but I agree with everything you just said.
Okay, all
Yes.
right, I just wanted to clarify that.
I just wanna see it before we even talk about it.
No,
you
no,
know?
I
Yeah.
understand that, but
But this motion is just to continue the public hearing.
Right,
So-
and then if we need to make it again, we'll make it again. But
I'm just trying to clarify that.
I fully
it's that-
agree.
It's that, and that was in the memorandum that we sent from the Environmental Commission.
Got it.
Just so-
fully agree.
Okay.
Okay, resolutions, folks. Does anybody want to pull a resolution?
252, please.
252, I think we should pull the donation. and
Well,
discuss
I'll take care of that one.
Okay.
253 and 254, I'll take care
All
of.
right, great. Public safety issues. And how about, who was responsible for the turf field discussions with the county? Was that you, Chuck?
I think it was Doug. I mean,
From the council?
you notified the county of the acceptance of the pads?
Yes.
Is that what you, I think that's what that was.
Yes.
I mean, there's been no conversations in the last 2 weeks.
They're gonna get back to us with the colors that are available.
Okay.
Okay, so let's pull the first one, which is the fees. So what is discussion with the fees?
The parking decals?
252, yep, the parking.
So I was approached by one of our business owners asking that if we could expand the number of shopper parking spots on the Mount Airy municipal lot. The municipal lot, my observation is that the shopper parking tends to be more utilized and as a percentage of the 6 spots available. And the other decaled spots tend to be less utilized as a percentage of the available spots. Therefore, you know, if we could go from 6 to 10 or 12 shopper parking spots, and that was the first request by the business owner, so I'm bringing that forward as a request that I received. I think it's a good idea myself, based on my observations. That was one thing. The other is, can we make the spots more clear? The signs are fairly small and can be missed, and then you end up with a shopper parking in a decaled spot, and that's resulted in at least one ticket. There's a letter to the sorry, this is an unrelated issue. But the same person who made the request said that they know of one customer who received a fine for being in the wrong spot in the parking lot. And that obviously, you know, leaves a bad taste in some shoppers.
But I think the lots are all signage.
There is signage, it's just not as obvious. Like the question was, can we paint the spots as reserved and shopper parking? There's like 2 small signs that say shopper parking between these 2 signs. And it's, you know, to somebody who's coming from out of town, maybe they don't notice it as much as which spot to park in. That was the question that was asked. So the question is, can we make the spots more obvious, which ones are the shopper spots? And could we have more shopper spots? Because it doesn't seem like that would, you know, hinder anybody who has a decal. There always seems to be an excess of decaled spaces available. So that doesn't prevent us from passing this resolution.
I was just going to say,
at all, but I'm bringing it up because when I saw this resolution, it made me think of those 2 things.
Okay, fine. All right, so we're okay. Any other questions with that?
No.
Okay, the fees are fine?
All right, so 253 and 254, the police department is interested for several reasons of acquiring a drone, more than just one that you'd buy online and use at home and so forth. We've had a few incidents in town where we wanted to be able to see into a backyard where someone had a weapon, wanted to see exits and entrances to homes. So this grant is not for the drone, it is for the FAA compliance training that a minimum of 2 officers must attend. Right now it's Brian Kelly, Christopher Luckenbach, who have gone to training, almost like a first course to see what's involved. And this company called Dart Drones, with the anticipation, I guess, of you purchasing the drone from them, will supply a grant to cover, I think it's a 1 or possibly 2-day class. So that's what the nature of the grant is for.
That's 254.
It's 53 and 54.
Because 53 is $5,000. That
Oh, I'm
was
sorry.
given us by
Which 53?
accepting $5,000 from the foundation, the Paragano Foundation.
I'm sorry. I thought they were linked. I'm talking about 54 only.
Okay, so 54 is training from this company that they're going to give to us.
Right, exactly.
There's no implicit guarantee we're going to buy anything
No,
necessarily.
not at
It's
all.
just pure grant.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. And the other one, 253, I'd like to just mention.
Yeah, sorry.
Paragano
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to combine those.
That's okay. Paragano family again donated $5,000 to the police department, and we're very appreciative of that donation. That's all I wanted to say. Okay, so we're good. We'll move these. All right, so we are going to move resolutions 18-250 to resolution 18-256. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeo?
Yes. Okay. Reports. We'll move into the report section. 9A, report for the municipal attorney. Jack, do you have anything for us?
Unless you have any questions?
I have a question about the train station.
Yes, the notice, the deadline expired on Friday. I will file a complaint this week. Keep remove them from the records.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, can you clarify that? I missed that, what you're talking about.
Notice was served on them to vacate, the deadline is Friday, and I will file a complaint this week to remove them from the premises.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. Anything else for Jack? Okay, we'll move on to Public Safety Committee.
I have one thing, and this is purely directed to new elected officials, so that would be still John. I don't think you did your NIMS compliance yet, did you? You did not?
Back last year, right?
Did you do it last year with the chief?
You say NIMS. Oh, yes, I did, with the chief.
Yeah, you
Yes.
did, okay. Christine, did you?
I'm doing it tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. And then Jeff, you're gonna have to do it for yourself as well.
Yeah,
Oh, are you,
all
okay. You're all going at the same time? Okay. So it's just a reminder that for elected officials to attend that ICS 402 NIMS training tomorrow. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. Finance Personnel Committee.
So we haven't had any meetings since the last report, so we have no new information.
Okay, Engineering, Technology, Public
Oh,
Works.
One
Yes,
second.
go ahead.
Was there, Ralph, any personnel issues that we have?
At this point,
Yeah, no? I thought there was, okay, good enough.
Okay. Engineering, Technology, and Public Works Committee, we had,
Well, we had a meeting last week,
no, the week of the election.
the week of the election, yeah, Tuesday, yeah.
John's not here, but Doug, you could give us a little update on the work you're doing, but I will add that My Mount Road, I got an email from John today, My Mount Road and the one up on the mountain that we did the drainage. Chapin. We're trying to schedule paving for next week for those two roads, thank God.
And
hopefully the weather cooperates. I'm shocked the asphalt plants are still open, but knock on wood.
And Anderson Road, you probably noticed that the sidewalks are being, the ramps are being put in. The grant money is in bank, right, Ralph? And because of the weather, because that's such a large project, as early as we can in April, maybe early May, from the library up to Mendham Road Extension where it cuts off, that will be fully done, drainage, whatever's needed. So, busiest road in town will be paved.
And they may have finished the ADA ramps.
That's what I meant, the ramps, yeah, yeah.
So I have some feedback on that, questions, and I guess John's not here. Do you know if we're gonna, I know it's not being paved until spring or summer.
It'll be spring.
The crosswalks are not lined up with the ramps, and a lot of people have expressed.
Well, the crosswalks are gonna have to be repainted and striped anyway.
So could we do that? I know it's doing it double, but like you said, it's the busiest road in town.
I don't see why not.
And there's one by the library in particular that it's just causing a lot of, I'm just.
Is it painted already?
The old spot is painted.
Okay.
But where the ramp is not the same spot.
Okay, well, I'm sure they'll make,
So it's a different corner altogether at Wesley, like it's the other corner. And then on where I am at Olcott, it's about like 7 feet difference.
that might have been a product of the ramp going in after the painting was there. So now that we have new ramps, which are all ADA compliant, I'm sure they'll match the striping for that.
Right, but that won't be until after it's paved?
Of course.
So that's a long time to do
No,
that.
I mean, how much of that is being used really in the winter as much? I mean.
It's a single day. There's a lot of
Okay.
people.
April, I think is when we're planning on doing it. I don't think they're gonna come out and stripe. I mean, Doug, what do you think? Striping now and then striping again?
And then block out the old.
Block out the old.
Yeah. I doubt that's gonna happen.
Yeah. We do have cross guards on.
Do we do it or does somebody else do it, Doug?
Benville Line Painting usually does it.
But it's a borough responsibility, it's not like a county road or, we would do it.
Who's the contractor?
Can we see how much it would cost us to do it, and then we'll make a decision?
It's only 2, really, Wesley and Olcott.
How long's it been there like that?
Like 3 weeks, I guess, 2 weeks.
Okay, what else? Pill Hill Road, they started the drainage work on Pill Hill, so they're gonna do the drainage and do the paving in the spring, I know for Pill Hill. I think that's all I have. Doug, you want to give a little update on some of the projects?
Yeah, we have the playground equipment is in, it's all been installed.
At Kiwanis, right?
At Kiwanis, yes. You can see what happened this weekend today, so there's more days to, the other parts of the project we have to do. You have to put down the fabric paper, curving, rubber safety curving that goes around it, and then put down the mulch. So I have the mulch scheduled for the 29th, and all that date, and hopefully Wednesday, we'll get to the curving, and we'll be able to get the paper down on Wednesday and finish it. We still have some grading to do, seeding, but 99% of the work will be done. Again, weather dependent, if we can get in there and do it, it dries up a little bit. Did a lot of work at the library the last couple of weeks. We have new gutters, seamless gutters. There were a lot of leaking gutters up there. Those have been installed. We did a evaluation of the existing heating system, which turned out we need new thermostats, quite a bit of work, so we contracted to have that work done. We met with Train. They're going to increase the run times of the gas-fired preheats on the roof, so hopefully that'll save us some dollars. Working with Detective Kelly, we determined good locations for the surveillance camera, for that trash receptacle there that we just had to rework the fencing. And we also have the new signage up there, no dumping. And the generator there has been serviced. We talked about, you saw that the parking lot at the train station has been taken care of, striped, that's completed now. We had one area where we were getting some ponding across from the feeding grain. They came in on Saturday and did a little bit of milling there and a little bit of repair work, so the water seems to be getting out of there and going to an existing drain. So that worked out nicely. We did a lot of work the last week in the downtown on the lights, getting all the lights up and running. Checked the outlets, the inlets to make sure that the reeds would work. Everything seems to be working. We have one reed that isn't working. We're going to follow up with that. And then we're also checking the electric at the Walcott Square for the tree line. And we'll leave it there.
Great.
Thank you, Doug. A lot
Thank
of
you.
work. Thank you. Any other reports from committees, the commissions? We heard from Open Space, some from Environmental tonight, so that's good. All right, so we'll move on to new items of business. 2019 non-contractual salary ordinance. Did everybody had time to take a look at that? Any comments?
So Ralph, this is saying that we give a 2% raise to the non-contractual employees. It's just consistent with the contractual obligations that we both have in place for the police and that we anticipate for the other contractual unions that aren't under contract right now, but we're negotiating with.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So everybody happy with that?
Yeah, consistent.
It's also consistent to introduce it at this point in the year with the way we've done it for the last 10 years or so, Ralph,
Yes,
to introduce it in December so that we don't have to do a retro pay thing later in the January timeframe. It saves paperwork and time and calculations for the staff, is that right?
That's correct.
So that's why we're doing it at this point in the year.
That's correct.
So does that mean that we should put it on the agenda for next meeting, or?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, does that, by discussing this item of business, do we have to actually take any action tonight to get it on the agenda for December 10th?
If you were in favor and you want to introduce it tonight, that could be done, or the 10th. Now the 10th, if it was introduced tonight, it would be completed by, I think, the 3rd or 4th of January.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just tonight, public hearing on the 10th, then it takes 20 days after publication,
Right.
which would get us to at the end of December, which would be, it would be in place as January 1st of 19.
So does it make sense to everybody that we do that this way then, so that we don't have the extra paperwork for next year?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so let's take whatever roll call or whatever vote that we need to do.
Well, it's introduction, so you can do it on your voice vote.
Okay.
Okay.
The public hearing would be December 10th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Jack, do I have to motion it?
Yeah, you need a motion second.
All right, let me find it first. I don't know what the title is. What's up?
1788.
Ordinance setting 2019 salaries and hourly rates for non-contractual employees.
Okay, so, so I'd like to, I don't move, I just, 18, 17, 88, ordinance setting 2019 salaries and hourly rates for non-contractual employees.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Roll call.
So this is to put it on the agenda.
Put it on agenda for
Right.
the next meeting.
No, this is introduction.
Is it?
Introduction.
Introduction. City can do introduction on the voice vote.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against?
This is first reading and introduction.
Yep, okay. Reorg, I'm not sure if the new council and mayor have had any discussions about reorganization.
I've had no discussions.
Okay, so we'll move along.
And there's actually, I think in the packet, there's a schedule, a suggested calendar for next year.
The calendar for
Yeah, I
next year?
think we
Yes.
talked about how it would work with Bill's lists or whatever with,
It's the usual second and fourth Monday of each month, with the July and August having one meeting, and just I think reorganization, it's on tentatively for January 2nd, if that's what
The
you,
reorg meeting,
what
okay.
you want. So it hasn't, altered from the past.
Okay, so we'll move. So also we have a draft redevelopment agreement, RPM, for our affordable housing.
Yeah, that's really informational at this point in time, because there are ongoing discussions, especially with respect to the state that the council is not pleased with the conceptual plan. So it's not really very action this evening.
Okay.
If we have comments, we'll just send them to you.
Please, and I'll forward this to Randy.
Okay.
10D is a draft resolution, contracts due diligence, contracts is for 251 Claremont Road. We'll probably put that on hold.
Yeah,
until-
let's table it. We do have to be cognizant that there's a 90-day deadline for the environmental contingency. And the contract was signed October 22nd, but I wrote a sending email to Marcel telling him to keep that in mind.
Okay. And the last one is correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence?
There was one that came from Ed English, it was after the agenda was put out, and it's just, they didn't answer by December 14th, so you can take a look at that.
About what?
The motion would be to approve Green Team and Environmental Commission to distribute 1,000 free tree seedlings to residents at a special event in 2019 at Burns High School parking lot. Tentatively April 26th. They did this last year, I believe.
They usually do it during the recycling for their electronics.
Yeah. So should I move this for a vote, Jack?
Yes, just move second and voice vote.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move second.
I get one from it every year,
Okay.
and I got like 6 of
I
them in
have
a row.
no
All just
correspondence.
all
We got
going great.
an email from Mr. Haynes up on the Bernardsville Mountain, and he was wondering what kind of road work has been done, and he was concerned about using the open space money, although the money is in separate accounts, they're separate. But I just want to put in the record how much work has been done in the last, from 2012 to 2018 regarding our roads, especially up on the Bernardsville Mountain. 2012 Dryden Road was completed with drainage, milling, and pavement at 1.07 miles. 2014 Round Top Road was completed with drainage, milling, and pavement for 0.89 miles. Post Kennel Road, mill drainage and paving was done at 0.44 miles. 2015 Hardscrabble Road, mill pave and drainage at 1.06 miles. Boulderwood Drive, mill and pave, 0.81 miles. Roebling Road, drainage, mill, pave, 0.57 miles. 2016 Peachcroft Drive, mill and pave, 0.94 miles. Crown View Lane, mill paved, 0.3 miles. 2017 Berkshire Drive, reclaim and pave, 0.27 miles. Postcoon-Hart Road, mill, drainage, mill and pave, 1.2 miles. Clark Road, mill and pave, 0.85 miles. Charles Road, mill and pave, 0.27 miles. Jean Place, mill pave, 0.1 miles. 2018 Chapin Road, mill, drainage and paving at 0.83 miles. Mine Mount Road, curbing, sidewalk, mill and paving, 0.9 miles. Those two projects are still pending paving, but the other work has been completed. So since 2012 to 2018, the Bernardsville Mountain has seen 10.59 miles of work done on the roads, which is a pretty great accomplishment.
It's a fifth of all the road.
Yeah. So let's put that in the record, please. Thank you.
I just have one announcement too. The grant that we received for the walkability workshop is scheduled for December 6th. It's from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Sacred Heart Chapel on Bernards Avenue. And representatives from the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, Rutgers University, and Sustainable Jersey will be there to allow residents a hands-on or feet-on those streets to give their feedback on what ways we can implement to improve the walkability on those streets. It will include demonstrations and some other tools that they've used in other communities. So it's a 1 o'clock presentation, 2 o'clock everyone will walk around, 4 o'clock debrief, and everyone's invited to go, especially if you find yourself walking on Bernards Avenue, West Street, and Prospect Street on a regular basis. So you're all invited too.
What day of the week is that?
Thursday. Thursday, December 6th.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Anybody else?
That's it.
Just want to clarify, the 2019 meeting schedule, we do a resolution for that, so I can put that on the December 10th agenda. We did it in early December last year,
Yeah,
so
I
I just
think so.
will officially approve that on December 10th.
Okay, fine. Okay, we are going to go into closed session. Jack, do you have anything for us?
Mary Jane?
Can I say,
Yes.
is this Mike's last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for your service.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure, thank you.
So if we go in closed session, are the elect members allowed to stay in the?
They are.
Yes.
Results have been certified, they are, yes.
Yeah. So certified results, our councilman-elect and mayor-elect, please join us for our closed session.
Thank you, guys.